Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Career Conversations today. My name is Jim Fergal, and today's topic is going to be a panel discussion on opportunities in nonprofits. We have Kate Wollensak she's Senior Vice President, Chief Human Resource Officer with YMCA of America. Geri Kerger, Executive Director for Nami of DuPage. Paul Lewis, Director of Job Assistance, People's Resource Center, and Gina Ciametti, she's MBA lead recruiter with Career Nonprofits. So looking forward to an interesting discussion today about the opportunities out there. Again, I'm Jim Fergal. I'm the Manager of Job Seeker and Veterans Services. Also on the call with me are two of my workshop facilitators, Javon Morris and Jennifer Wagaman. Those of you who are new to workNet page, we do have an introductory workshop, from layoff to launch, Tuesdays at 9:30. We do have training grants up to $10,000 for upgrade training. To earn certifications, anything from different information technology certifications, medical, and manufacturing CNC, as well as truck driving CDLA. So I would attend the workshop if I was you. There's no need to pay back the money because it's taxpayer money. The only requirement is you let us know when we have a job, because we do report back to Congress on that. That's where the grant comes from, under the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. You can go to worknetdupage.org and sign up for the workshop there, and also fill out one of our Get Started forms, worknetdupage.org. A little Zoom etiquette. Please be, of course, polite and courteous. We are going to take questions in the chat room. Please either write out the word question, or maybe even better to catch the eye is just put question mark ahead of your question, and we will take questions during the presentation. I'm going to do a round robin. Each speaker will start off with a question, and we'll just go around it, let each speaker have that a shot at that question. Okay. So before I go off screen here and go to our live, again, I'm just going to go through all our panelists for those of you who come in a little later. Kate Wollensak, she's the Senior Vice President, Chief Human Resource Officer for the YMCA of America, and she's also our Workforce Investment Board President. That's the board that guides us as far as training and our guidelines and rules and regs. Geri Kerger is the Executive Director for Nami DuPage. Great organization. I've had some personal experiences with them, family-wise and work-wise. And Paul Lewis is the Director of Job Assistance, People's Resource Center. We refer people there. And then Gina Ciametti, she's an MBA lead recruiter with Careers and Nonprofits. I go back to their organization several years, probably about 10 or 12 now. Another excellent organization looking for opportunities. So I'm going to stop my share and sorry. Okay, so we got everyone on board. Hey, good morning, everybody. So Kate, I'm going to start with you since you're president. Could you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Sure, I'd love to. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you're familiar with the Y. It's a pretty strong brand, and many of you may have your own Y story. I lead human resources for the national office called the YMCA of the USA. So our office does not have a campground, a pool, or a gym. It is an office that serves those 2,700 Ys throughout the country, 22 million people a year, of which 10 million are children under the age of 18. And of course, our mission is to build the capacity of those YMCAs to advance and strengthen our communities in youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility.
Okay, great, thank you. Geri, how about Nami?
Hi, thanks. I'm Geri Kerger, Executive Director of Nami DuPage. And Nami is an acronym that stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. And we are one of about 500 affiliates throughout the country, Nami affiliates, but we are one of the largest in the country, typically serving in a non-COVID year about 30,000 people. Our mission is to provide support, education, and advocacy to individuals living with mental illness and their families. We're unique in the aspect that our services, we don't provide medication or therapy. What we provide are peer services. So although we have social workers on our staff, most of our programs are conducted by people who are in recovery. So we provide a wide variety of programs along the support, education, and advocacy. Typically about 20,000 of those that we serve are in DuPage County schools in our mental health program.
And you have a nice building on the county campus.
Yes, we rent space from the health department. So we're located in the behavioral health 115 North County Farm Road.
Great, thank you. Okay, Paul, People's Resource Center.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Lewis. I'm the Director of Job Assistance with the People's Resource Center. So a little bit of background. So since 1975, People's Resource Center has been bringing neighbors together to respond to hunger and poverty in DuPage County. So we help out nearly 26,000 DuPage County residents every year. Our organization offers nutritious food and other basic necessities like clothes and rent assistance for neighbors in need. So PRC also connects people with resources. So we have empowerment services such as tutoring, jobs, computer technology, art, and a caring community of volunteers that help power our organization. So we get a lot of clients that come in for our food pantry, and then through there we offer basic empowerment services to get them the services that they need to thrive.
Great, thank you. And Gina.
Hi, good morning. I am Gina Ciametti. I'm the lead recruiter with Careers in Nonprofits Chicago. Our mission is to connect the best people with the best causes. So we are turning 15 next month, which is very exciting, but we have our thumbprint here in Chicago, as well as Washington, D.C. and the San Francisco Bay Area. Our national reach has helped us connect with over 600 nonprofit organizations and membership associations to fill temporary, temp to hire, and permanent direct hire roles. So again, working with a wide variety of professions, of entry level to senior C-suite level professionals, and we're able to do this in this remote setting right now, which has been really exciting. For the past several years, we've also seen our growth come from those who've joined our team. So our leadership alone makes up over 30 years of nonprofit experience, which is really wonderful.
Great, thank you. I like how you chose the word interesting with these COVID times. Just
It's been interesting.
Yeah, challenging and interesting. All righty. Okay, Geri, one of the things I've learned at career conferences is very few people really start off in the industry and that we trained in college, and then next thing you know, we're here. Could you tell us about your career path and how you ended up in the nonprofit field?
My career path has taken many different twists and turns. It's definitely not a straight trajectory. I started out, I was a sociology and education major. So, and then I had worked in some schools and done some social work, and I received a graduate degree in guidance and counseling and thought I would maybe be a school guidance counselor. But when I started, getting further into that, I thought, every time in social work, you run into so many issues related to the law. It's just every time you turn around, there's another law. And whenever anybody would see, the court says this or that, they would just stop and back off. And I thought, well, I really want to understand this. So I went to law school. And so I have a law degree, a law license. And so I practiced law for a while, and I taught law related classes related to social work. And I worked in numerous, after that, I decided I didn't really like that much. And I went into nonprofits. And so I've worked in nonprofits altogether about 25 years and various nonprofits. But someone said to me, well, this is kind of an odd way to get to where you are. And I said, but I am using every single thing I have ever learned in life. And this is sort of a compilation. And I'm not sorry for any of the education or the experience I have, because it's helped me tremendously in the job I currently have, which I love. It's the best job I've ever had. I love the work. I love the people. I love what I do. But I don't think I'd be able to do it as well if I didn't have all of these experiences that I've had through life to this point.
Well, that's kind of interesting, because I call us Renaissance workers because we are an accumulation of all these experiences, education, people we meet. I was just thinking about it on the way in of how many things from my past that I've used, whether it was taking music and piano and guitar lessons, to playing sports, to all this. We use it all now. It's interesting. Paul, how about your career path?
Sure. I also had a career path that was not a straight line. So I actually got my degree in criminal justice, and I started off my career as an armored car guard for a while. So I was driving those big armored trucks that you see throughout the city, picking up money from banks and fast foods. So I did that for a while. And then on the side, I was a substitute teacher. And then I ended up really enjoying teaching and had the opportunity to teach in Geri, Indiana full time. It was the start of the school year. They didn't have enough teachers and they needed somebody to teach first grade full time. So they liked who I was and just took a chance on me, even though I had no degree in teaching or anything whatsoever. So ended up doing that and just really loving the education field and working with families and youth. So I ended up doing that for about 3 years. And then from there was able to get my first job in nonprofit in a direct service role in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I worked as a coordinator to coordinate services for families that had kids with real severe mental health disorders. So it was really my first foray into like working with the community, building connections, and then using those resources to connect families that really needed them. So did that direct service role for a few years, enjoyed that, and then had an opportunity to move out to Chicago, where I took on another direct service role with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metro Chicago. I was there in direct service for a few years. And again, it was working with volunteers and connecting families to resources and supporting one-to-one matches between volunteers and children. And from there, I just kind of moved up, ended up being a manager. And then at the end, a senior manager, where it was a lot more kind of behind the scenes nonprofit management, working to bring in talent and place them in the agency wherever they best fit. So did that up until January 2021, and then was offered this position at the People's Resource Center as the Director of Job Assistance. So again, really using the skills that I learned in Chicago to, instead of connecting families that had youth, I'm working with clients to connect them with employers in the community that, both might be a good fit for a potential job.
Okay, great. Gina, how about you?
Yeah, well, right out of undergrad, I had a bachelor's in communications and did not know what to do with it. So I started working for my alma mater in the admissions department. And from there, my career in higher education took every direction it could. I was recruiting for admissions. I was doing work in graduate enrollment. I was leaving that institution to go to other universities in the city, anything from career development to advising. I really loved to hear the story and sort of path of where students wanted to go and how I could help get them there. So with that, was able to secure my MBA with a focus in nonprofit management. Didn't know if I wanted the advanced degree, but I loved the program, and it was sort of the first of its kind that I was able to find. And once that wrapped up, I was looking to careers in nonprofits to be a candidate. I was excited to see what was going on in our field, especially in Chicago, and they were hiring internally. So I went after the recruiting role that I have now. And I've been very lucky to be in a role where I am speaking to somebody new every day. Really hearing their story every day, which I think is the greatest joy of my work. But no one really goes to seek out staffing and recruiting. You don't go to school for it. So it often finds you. But I'm really glad it did, because it's gotten me in front of lots of different nonprofit leaders and those who are making incredible strides in Illinois and across the country. And so I really love that there's variety to my role and how I get to support organizations and candidates alike, just kind of marrying the two together.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Kate, I know you got an interesting path.
I have more of a straight path, but hey, Gina, you used your communications background because you're using great listening skills, and that's what we all need to do our job, right?
Yeah.
I do have more of a traditional path. I have an undergraduate and a master's in human resources or in business as well. So it had always been my desire to enter the people field, but most of my career has been in the for-profit sector. In large Fortune 100 corporations, getting all of the generalist background in human resources. And just to those who are listening, HR is in every organization. So it doesn't matter if it's big or small or for-profit or nonprofit or education. It's one of those essential administrative functions that's needed. And I was fortunate enough to have some fabulous employers, as I mentioned, Fortune 100, but in those organizations, they have foundations and they volunteer their staff to do things, whether it be United Way or some other organization. I then found myself working for the for-profits, volunteering my evenings and weekends to some of those organizations. And as we all know, once you start volunteering, they find you and you're a volunteer for life. As Jim mentioned, I am the chair of the DuPage County Workforce Board, which is the unit that provides that education money. So that's how I fell into nonprofit volunteerism. But HR was needed in a nonprofit, and that's how I fell into the nonprofit world. I have a lot of merger and acquisition background, and one of those nonprofits was having a rather large merger, and applied. Now I work at the Y and YMCA of the USA, and I get to apply my HR background in a nonprofit environment, and it's the best of both worlds.
There's a one of the career conferences I went to, they developed this, the chaos theory of careers. And I look at my career as a plate of spaghetti, cooked. It's every which way. And one time I heard a speaker say, it's not in the straight lines that we learn, it's in the curves that we learn and have those experiences that teach us lessons. Well, since Gina brought it up, Paul, how has COVID affected your organization? Positively or negatively?
You know what? I'd say it's a little bit of both. I mean, on the negative side, the People's Resource Center, our mission is really, we connect with our clients face to face, and that's just, our volunteers and our staff are people, and we feel that we can best serve clients in person. Now, obviously, for the past year and a half, we haven't been able to do that. So that's been challenging because we have a lot of clients that really connect with our staff, and we build relationships through that in-person contact. On the flip side, some of the positive things that our organization has learned through COVID is, we used to be very paper oriented, and COVID has forced us to utilize technology to provide services to our clients in ways that we didn't use before. So we've become really good with like the Google Suite, Zoom. We found out that like doing workshops over Zoom has actually increased our attendance and also helped us reach people that we otherwise couldn't reach. A big thing for, at least in job assistance, I'm working on, making sure that our services are equitable, and doing workshops over Zoom gives us the opportunity to connect with clients that might not have reliable transportation to get to our centers in Wheaton and Westmont. Clients that have barriers with childcare. This still gives them the opportunity to get our information in ways that they couldn't get previously. So I think the utilization of technology and learning and growing and having to simplify our intake process and the services that we can provide our clients will help us in the end when things go back to whatever normal looks like. We're going to be able to be a stronger agency and be able to serve more clients.
Okay, good. Gina, how about you?
Yeah, March 2020 was very eye-opening, but with careers in nonprofits, kind of what Paul is mentioning, we were able to adjust pretty well to the technology that we were already using. So things like DocuSign and Zoom, and even the software that we've been using to track candidate and organization information really gave us, I think, the edge to pursue remote opportunities as a company. But I know that's not always the case for nonprofits. So it was a time where come March and April of last year, we saw the hiring freezing, we saw the furloughs and the layoffs. And for us to maybe see, more of a decline in business, we were seeing a very serious uptick in candidate interest, especially those who maybe haven't interviewed or applied to a job in a very long time. It was new territory. So we were all kind of learning together. There is, I think, a level of emotional intelligence that comes with it as well, to really be understanding and empathetic of everyone's situation. If you are the one making the hard decisions or you're the other end of it. But we thankfully have been able to still do our work remotely. I think it's helped us engage with other organizations outside of our typical regions. So I've been able to work with Madison and Atlanta and Fresno, and I may not have gotten that opportunity if I was coming to the office every day and not always utilizing this remote modality. So that had its really great perk of just kind of building out our exposure. But even so, it's been maintaining, a really steady stream of temporary talent, those who are willing to work throughout a pandemic, or even those hard-hitting permanent roles that might be more essential than others. So that's why we were seeing a lot of them. But now it is a buffet of so many different opportunities because we're following what others are doing. So for us, we're taking lead by other nonprofits. How is the work being done now? What are you hoping to see for the end of the year? Does this role make sense to be fully remote forever? We're asking newer questions now too, which I think is great. And there's a nice balance coming to everybody about what they're looking for and what candidates want. So there was, a very fine silver lining that came out of last year for staffing.
I also think that this remote, I know video interviews and virtual interviews were starting to come into play, but I think this accelerated the whole process.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
By several weeks. Permanent roles that took 55 days are taking 35 days, which is great because usually time is of the essence for everybody involved.
Wow. Okay, cool. Kate, how about you with COVID? How did that affect your organization?
Yeah, similar to others, the negatives were the immediate cost reduction efforts that we had to put in place as well, closing wise, furloughs, terminating employees, obviously not the fun part of an HR job. The positives of that were that we kept our doors open to serve those communities that needed meals, to those communities that needed a safe place to study when the schools weren't open. We had learning pods and first responder childcare. So we did react and reinvent. Well, something we've always done is be out in the community. So negatives are definitely letting the folks go. Some of the positives, much to what the others said here, is the absolute acceleration in digital transformation for everything that we do. Agree with Gina, the recruiting process is so streamlined. We can get through so many more candidates and not give anybody directions on our building or public transportation. It's super convenient for us and for them, and it is absolutely accelerating the hiring process. The other thing I want to point out was the positives, silver lining, is the advocacy work that was done in Washington, D.C. with other nonprofits to raise the awareness of nonprofit needs, the fundraising that came in, the federal support that came in, the changes to unemployment for those that were self-funded. All of those things were as a result of the nonprofits getting together and walking Capitol Hill and pushing for that. So it was positives and negatives.
Okay. And Geri, how about your organization? I know there's been a lot of talk about the emotional impact as well of COVID. How has your organization been affected?
Well, like everybody else, there's a plus and there's a positive and a negative. And for us, the biggest positive is that it has really put a spotlight on the issue of mental health. And it's also really helped to very quickly reduce a lot of the stigma that people have had about receiving services. And when you have people like Michelle Obama and Meghan Markle and Simone Biles, you know, when people are coming out that are very famous and respected people and saying that they too suffer from depression or anxiety or whatever it may be, that's really helped us a lot. So we were real fortunate with that. The negative part would be we had all of our fundraisers scheduled for the spring last year. And it was like, wow, those weren't really going to be happening in the regular format. So that was a lot. And it was also a lot of redoing what we do to the Zoom format. We had planned to institute Zoom. We had looked at it in the fall, but we had to do it very quickly, obviously. But we were able to do it within a week, to put our programs on Zoom within a week of the closures. But we also did things to provide workshops to people on parenting through the pandemic, coping with the pandemic. We were out there, we made over 1,800 phone calls to households involved with Nami to check on well-being, help people get services they needed. So it was both for us being in mental health. There was a positive. There's a positive, but the negative too is that the suicide rate went up, drug overdose rate went up. So there were a lot of negatives, but as one person in our office who suffers from anxiety and depression said, well, they were okay with it. And they said, well, now everybody knows how I feel all the time. So there's, a little bit of acceptance there, but certainly we saw a tremendous increase in the need for services.
A lot of stress in this going remote.
Yes.
It's like, I'm afraid to leave the computer, when it first happened. They're watching me, right?
Yes.
I have a couple questions in the chat that I'll go through here. I recently took an early retirement from my previous startup over 23 years. And now looking for a new career, hoping to get back and help small businesses, wondering what organizations in the nonprofit sector that I could work for. It's kind of hard not knowing what the person does, but any comments on that? Looks like he retired, or she, and they're looking to help small businesses or organizations in the nonprofit sector.
I mean, if she's looking for volunteer work, I know with the People's Resource Center, she's around DuPage County. We're always looking for job coaches to work with clients and help place them with employers in the community. So, I mean, you're sort of like indirectly helping small businesses, just working with clients and saying, hey, you have this set of skills. I know a small business in the community that's looking for somebody like this. So it's a really good way to connect small businesses with people that could be a good fit for open positions.
I've worked with several job seekers that have, which will probably answer a question coming up here, that have volunteered and end up actually working for the organization they volunteer for. So I would say don't overlook volunteering. Next question is, how do I attract the attention of larger nonprofits, NFTs? I have considerable experience and multiple degrees. I've done a lot of community-based work, local level, and would like to work at the senior level for a large non-profit like the YMCA. How do I attract the attention of recruiters? Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that question as well as anyone else here. There has to be an opening. We're all running a little bit lean right now. I think in the past where we would look at skill sets and make placements, we're running a little bit lean for those. So if you have a specific background, and I just encourage you to look on our website, to look at other careers and nonprofits website, to look at AARP's website. There are lots of openings out there. You just have to apply your skill set to it. And I also follow the movement. There's a lot of movement in the C-suite and at the executive level and a lot of nonprofits right now. I see Gina shaking her head too. There's just been a lot of people have retired and moved on, right? We've heard about that. So look at those organizations. And when you see that there's movement or a senior executive has moved on, reach out to someone there and make a connection. Gina, you want to add to that?
I sure can. Yeah. I know currently with our team out in DC, they're seeing a lot of remote opportunities at the area director level, the national director level, because it will take somebody to travel on occasion to these spaces, but the work can be done remotely. So if that, the larger sense of the small versus medium versus large organization and that appeal, those types of roles are certainly out there and we're seeing them come to us pretty regularly. So taking a closer look at the title and the responsibility, I think is a step in the right direction, but knowing too that certain areas of the country are definitely hiring in that capacity. So if you're wanting to branch outside of Illinois, I would encourage at least the DC market or any other pocket of the country where there's a very heavy or dense population of nonprofits.
I'd really like to echo what Jim said too. If you're trying to attract the attention of a national nonprofit or a big organization, if there's opportunities to volunteer and work directly with that agency in your local market, that's a great way to start networking with people at the executive level or the director level, and just saying on your resume that you have volunteer experience with that organization. I think that goes a long way. Back when I was at Big Brothers Big Sisters, we hired a lot of people that volunteered to be bigs or mentors to our kids. They would enjoy the organization and then apply at open positions. I hired quite a few that were former bigs. So that goes a long way. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're willing to volunteer for them and you align with the mission, I think from a hiring perspective, you're going to get noticed more.
I so agree to what Paul just said. You can get on, if you are a senior level person with lots of experience, volunteer for a committee, get on the board of directors. You never know. I mean, that is a huge networking opportunity.
It's ironic that we're talking about where the openings are, because Gina, that was going to be my first question to you, was what are the hiring trends? And before you answer, I had heard from one of your recruiters a few years ago that Chicago was the second largest city with the amount of nonprofit headquarters. Is that correct?
It is. Oh, yes. It's a second city. True and true. It is. There's a lot here and it's very spread out. I think oftentimes we think maybe Chicago proper is home to it, but if you branch out into the suburbs, there's spaces everywhere, a nonprofit for everything. So it's fun to take a really close look at all different counties and spaces of Illinois and sort of kind of getting a sense too of who is out there and where. There's a very high level of associations out in sort of like the northwest corner of the Chicagoland suburbs. You'll see like downtown is very true to more of like the healthcare or social services spaces. So it kind of just depends on where you're looking, but it's all very spread out.
So what type of positions do you see that the trend right now? I know Kate said that the C-level
Yeah.
is happening. What are you seeing?
Definitely the decision makers. So those in those director, senior, C-suite, but also new roles that I think took shape when folks were laid off or furloughed and we're kind of blending several roles into one, or we're making one role into two. So I think lots of spaces are getting creative with how to maximize budgets, how to maximize people, and bring on those that I think can fill in the gaps. So if you needed very strong fundraisers and you didn't have that before, now's the time to look for them because they're out there. So that is one example I can give, is that everyone's kind of puzzle piecing what they need right now. Also with the sense of, when 2020 said, hold on and pause for a moment, that meant that programs stopped and, certain continuing efforts that made up the season of nonprofits just had to be put on hold. So newer opportunities are showing themselves in marketing, in programming, in operations. So it really just depends on the need of the organization. But again, it is case by case. Everyone is marching to the beat of their own drum right now. So we're seeing a really healthy mix of a little bit of everything, but certainly still on that more senior, mid-level and up area.
Okay. Geri, how about Nami? What are you seeing happening with your organization?
Well, we're sort of at a point where we may be needing several different kinds of positions, but I think, and a lot of it has to do with our expansion as far as we got a grant to work with PADS, and we have another grant to work with people with a dual diagnosis. So we will be looking for people mostly in part-time positions though. And I know that they're going to be difficult. I imagine they'll be difficult to fill. But, we hope that what they're doing will provide some incentive and that people, because mostly we're looking for people that have that lived experience, either themselves or a family member. So we will be looking to fill some positions, but most of them will either be peers or outreach of some kind, because we need to get our message out to continue what we're doing. But I think it is a difficult time, because we did put an ad recently for a position and we only had 3 responses so far. And ordinarily, if this had been 2019, we probably would have had 30.
Wow. Okay. And Paul, how about you? What's happening at the People's Resource Center? Are you seeing hiring trends up or down?
We've been very lucky to the sense that we don't have any open positions right now. Because we're such a small organization, the positions that we do have open tend to be filled pretty quickly. And I'd say a lot of the people that we fill those positions with are people that have volunteered for the People's Resource Center. We actually just hired a client that came through the jobs program. There was an opportunity at People's Resource Center, and they got hired internally through one of the job coaches that connected them with that position. So I'm pretty lucky, or our organization is pretty lucky in the sense that we have not had a whole lot of turnover during COVID, which my previous organization, that was a real challenge. But we've been pretty lucky. But I would agree, when positions do open, I don't think there is that level of, especially if they're more entry level, you're not seeing such a large influx of applications for those roles, because there's so many different roles to choose from out there, especially in DuPage County. There's so many open roles that are considered entry level.
Okay. I want to get into candidates, and there's some great questions in here, like what I'm gonna go into is what do you look for in candidates and how do people transition. But here's one question for the panel. Will the older workforce find the same challenges experienced in the profit organizations? You know, overqualified, but not hired due to too much experience in the not-for-profits? If so, what are the challenges and how are non-for-profits working through the issue? So I guess it's the same old age issue and overqualified. Do you see that happening in the industry? Or let's start with Kate, because I think you're next on my list here.
Absolutely not. If you have a skill set, apply. We are looking for everything from, digital experience, marketing communications experience at our office, to our YMCAs who are desperate to hire seasoned practitioners that want to be lifeguards, want to help youth, want to do some outreach, counseling. So it depends on what you're looking for, but your age is welcome from a experience standpoint. So I don't see that being a barrier.
Okay. Geri? I guess it wouldn't matter if you have those positions coming, right?
No, no. For us, I would add that we really appreciate the experience of a lot of people and that they have, that's a tremendous plus. And I think for a lot of nonprofits, because nonprofits typically pay less than for-profits, that may be more of an issue in a for-profit organization in a corporate world, where they're looking at somebody at a certain management level that would have to make a certain dollar amount to take a job. And, people in non-for-profits are typically, not always, but I think most of us are working for less than we would be making in the other world. So, I would strongly encourage people, regardless. I'm certainly, as a senior myself, I'm certainly saying that we welcome people of all ages and experience. And that's what I found in most other nonprofits where I've worked as well, that it's not been an issue. I think, frankly, it would be more of an issue from what my own experience is in the corporate world than it is in nonprofits.
Yeah. When we were co-located with the unemployment office, that's why government's another place to look as well. They hired a World War II vet who was a P-51 Mustang fighter pilot. So age is not an issue sometimes.
Yes.
Paul, how about you?
The People's Resource Center, I'd say 100%. We have actually a lot of our employees, some full-time, some part-time, actually took the roles after they retired, just because they volunteered with the agency and enjoyed it, and that opportunity came up. So, our workforce currently, I think we have a little over 50 employees, is really diverse. So, and it's the same thing that everybody else is saying. We're really just looking at specific skill sets, and people that have those soft skills, compassion, the ability to talk and empathize with people in their situations. So we hire based on that. And I think, just my experience in the nonprofit, that's what a lot of nonprofits are really looking for is people with those soft skills, especially in client-facing roles or direct service roles. No, that's not to say that there's no agencies that don't discriminate, but I certainly have not seen that in any of the agencies I worked for. So far.
Okay. And Gina, well, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, because my next three questions are all incorporating what we've all been talking about. Is what do you look for in a candidate, tech or interpersonal? But I also, and this is an issue as well, is I believe in tailoring the resume to the arena. So even though you're nonprofit, and this is an issue too, people think because they volunteered that it doesn't count as experience. And I will have people, if they're looking at nonprofit, put their nonprofit ahead of all their work experience. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're encouraging the volunteer experience. Keep busting that myth. That's important. I like to think that on a candidate resume, more often than not, I am not seeing enough of the candidate sort of like brag about themselves. Tell me the who, what, where, why of your work, especially what you're currently doing. And to me, that reads really well because I have to be sure that on paper, you know, that is the strongest I can go off of right now until I meet with you in person or virtually. And I think then it's the build off of that conversation where I learn more about the behind the scenes skills, the other sort of soft interpersonal skills. And then you're learning too, sort of what the candidate is wanting to do moving forward or what they want to veer away from. Anything that they've done before, it's been asked of them. Please don't make me do this again, Gina. It's not for me. But it really is kind of getting all of the 20 questions out of the way and really seeing how it is the individualized experience of that candidate and why certain roles or interests make sense for them. So on a resume, the volunteer experience is so important. The memberships and affiliations are important. Actually listing out your hard skills and telling me what technicalities you have, whether it is just Microsoft or Microsoft and beyond. All of that is so relevant and marketable. And I think people often forget that those key skills matter. So I always push for just sort of those nuances on a resume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kate, how about you?
Oh, I couldn't agree more with Gina. Number one, more in a nonprofit, more than any area, the number one thing we look for is passion in the mission. We listen for their why story because you're working side by side with passionate people who are focused on the mission first. Then you bring that skill set, more of a generalist or specialist or whatever your skill set is. But we're looking for the passion first. And you're absolutely right. Include that volunteer. If you volunteer at the church, if you volunteered for a little league, that is so important because in a mission-based organization, that's what we're all about. I actually know for a fact that my 11 years serving on a Girl Scout board helped me get the role I have today. And that was all volunteer work. So please include that on your resume. You might think it's minor, but if you volunteered at the PTO, put it on there. We want to hire a person first and their skill set second.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier about when we talk about volunteers, I think I had a neon sign on my forehead that said, just ask me and I'll do it, you know? And I was involved in so many different organizations with my kids. I was like, "Whew." So, Geri, how about you?
Oh, I totally agree. I think, like we were saying earlier, I always like that expression, I am a part of all that I've met, you know? And so when you can talk about, and I've had people that in previous jobs, they've said, well, you know, I was a room mother or I did this. And I said, you know how difficult it is to be a room mother? And, you know, some of these things, I mean, wow, you have to have organization skills. You have to have a pretty good knowledge of how to keep kids in line and track and planning activities. So I think there are a lot of things people don't include that they should, but yeah, I think it's really important that you consider all of your experiences. And that's particularly true, I found, for women, because a lot of women, particularly like in my age group, left the workforce for a time to take care of children, and they're really worried about those gaps in resumes. And I think, you know, you can explain that your time is not wasted. And I think, but that's, I think, something that women oftentimes, you know, feel badly about, and there's no reason at all, you know, for them to do that. And I think that that should actually, you know, people should promote the things that they've done.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have sat down with women re-entering the workplace after childcare. You know, I always say, what did you do, BC, before children? And this one lady was, I call her an octopus. She was the admin for marketing department of Quaker Oats. So I could just see her handling high pressure and stuff. And I told her I had a front desk position, you know, that I didn't care that she was out 20 years because she had 4 kids. And I'm thinking of all the organization and dealing with stress and things like that. I want to address this. This question is, are there any opportunities for ADN nurses, and I think that's associate degree nurses, in the nonprofit arena? I do need benefits for myself and my son, so full-time would be preferable. I loved when I was in teaching roles in my career in the past as well, but doesn't have a degree for that though. So I'm thinking it's an associate's degree in nursing. And I know the hospitals, as my wife's a nurse, we're stressing bachelor degrees. So what does someone with an ADN do? Are there opportunities out there? Anyone out there? Or?
Know that there are contact centers, call centers, and customer service centers that if you're looking for flexible hours, there's a lot of 24/7 call centers out there that handle calls that would appreciate that background. Either it be crisis calls or medical calls. You know, I'd be happy to, Jim, to give you a couple names to post, but I would say if you're looking for something you can do from home, flexible hours, that there's a lot to be said about crisis management and having the skill set that this person who posted that has.
Okay. This question is, do recruiters suggest a skills section on a resume or add the skills in the employment section only? So I guess this is a resume format question. Paul, what would you say?
I think it probably doesn't matter. I mean, I think preferably, you know, sometimes it's good for me to kind of see the skills kind of separate. So I can see, you know, is this person got more experience in like direct service? Does this person have more experience in management? And I think by putting, you know, a certain number of skills that are, you know, easily seen on the resume, I mean, that tends to be one of the first things that I look at when I'm looking at a resume. And then, you know, below is usually, you know, their employment experience. But I think it's good to kind of put up front what types of skills you have, because that's the first thing I think that we look for is, you know, do you have the hard skills or the soft skills or the experience to be a good candidate for this position?
Okay. Gina?
Yeah, I was just about to add to that. I think skills is broad. If you want to make yourself a technical skills portion on your resume, that is strongly encouraged. It could focus on a different way too, if you're thinking about competencies or just areas of focus that you really like to highlight. So I don't want to call them buzzwords, but they're buzzwords. It's, you know, anything that is program development, or it's fundraising, or it's operation leadership. Tell me about the core of which your work revolves around, and maybe how it also relates to the role or area you're applying to, because that helps, again, steer the conversation. If you're applying to a grants role and I don't see grants anywhere on your resume, might lead for a trickier conversation. But I think eliminating any confusion or to I think offer conversation off the cuff is nice to just give us a sense of what you know without me even scrolling down or looking into your employment history. It's almost like the thesis of your career. Give me the sense of what you've done, what you're interested in doing now.
Okay. Geri, how about you?
I agree. I think a lot of times at small nonprofits, we lack people that have the technical skills. And so it's really important that you either have them to start with, or you're willing to learn them, because we've also found that sometimes, when you're promoting, and especially during the pandemic, when we switched so much to the Google Suite and things like that, we had people that were reluctant to learn in some cases, mostly volunteers that we needed. And it was like, oh no, we don't do this. And, and that became difficult. So I think that is important. But I think for us, we're also looking for skill sets, but we're also looking for people that that have multiple skills, because a lot of what we've done in the last year is combine positions that were never combined before. That, you do so much of this and then you do so much of that. And I think more and more places are doing that. So rather than hiring somebody that can only do one thing, I'm also looking at where else, might there be growth that they could do something else. So the people skills is going to be really, really important for us. The communication skills, the technical skills as far as computer literate or willing to learn at least. And but some of those things, it really starts with their flexibility and ability to fit into the culture of a nonprofit.
Yeah, the skills or the work experience or volunteer. I just want to give an example, but I do want to get into tech skills in a minute. There was an individual working with ABLE in our resource room who wanted to apply for a youth section in our organization, but he was from the banking area and auditing, and that's what he led off with. And I reviewed his resume, and way at the end was just little stuff about coaching. I said, well, what did you coach? And he was involved at football, baseball, basketball, all these different youth leagues. So I said, you got to move that up to the top. That's what qualifies you for the position. So don't be afraid to do that if you're going for any of the nonprofits, organizations, or associations, in my opinion. So let's talk technical skills, and are you willing to train? Is it Razor's Edge, Gina, that you use? Or I've heard that thrown around. So what are predominant technologies people should know?
Yeah, Razor's Edge is a gold standard for sure, depending on, I think, the size of the organization and if you're looking at it from a donor perspective or a member perspective. But any technical skill too, depending on, I think, your scope of work. If you are the finance professional, if you are the marketing professional, I think it's finding ways to stay relevant. That could be the biggest challenge. I think a majority of people tried to do that last year to keep their skills refreshed, which is great. But right now, things are coming into play that we weren't using before. We're on Zoom, but there's 7 other different platforms we could have chosen. So I think it's being well-versed in a little bit of everything will be really helpful. You do not have to be the expert, but you have to have the working knowledge, or like Geri mentioned, the willingness to learn and sit down and work on a new CRM or learn maybe advanced Excel, sort of depending on what you're needing to do. But that's important. I think it is the open-mindedness of building new technical skills. Even if technical skills are already your forte, perhaps it's some other area of work. It could be, you've always wanted to find yourself in grants, or you've always wanted to develop new programs and curriculum. So it's finding unique ways to get into those areas too that maybe help build out other technical skills.
Kate, how about you? What technical skills do the Y use, and would you be willing to train people or things like that?
Yeah, kind of backing off of what Gina and Geri both said. We're looking for someone who's willing to learn. If it's a requirement of the job, we probably can't teach it. But if it's less percentage of the job and you're willing to learn it, or you have a different application than ours and can apply that, that would be great. And then to what Geri said is we're looking for generalists more now than ever. There are hybrid jobs, there are job sharing and job segmenting because we have less money for headcount. So we are looking for people who can do multiple things. So in the technology sector, if you have a certificate or you're willing to learn, or you're have a prior technology, just make sure that you put that on your resume and in your cover letter that you're willing to learn and what it takes.
Okay, I just want to wrap it up. I feel it was excellent today. For us as an organization, job training, what guidance would you give us to help people coming in here learn the skills that would help your organization? Paul?
I mean, I really, again, want to emphasize those soft skills. I mean, it's really hard to find somebody that is willing to work with clients when they're at their most vulnerable. And I think having that really specific skill set and willingness to do that, day in and day out in some cases, and not get burnout. People that really just have that community mindset. I mean, if that's something that people like to do, they're very involved in their community with volunteer opportunities, and they're looking to make that switch. I mean, again, we talk about nonprofit work, maybe not paying as good, but there's a lot of other benefits. Flexibility. I mean, my nonprofit in particular is a really great place for people with families and young children to work. So, but we need people with those soft skills, and that's hard these days. I mean, the technical skills are important, but I think those are things that we can teach people. Salesforce, if you have experience working in Salesforce, I know a lot of nonprofits use that for just, basic, client management. But if you can emphasize your soft skills on your resume and what you're good at, that's really what we need when we're in a client facing role.
Okay. Any other comments from the panel? Because I know we got a hard stop coming up here, and you have work lives as well, and I really appreciate you all joining. Is there anything else you'd like to add here for job seekers, or any current positions you're hiring for that we haven't talked about?
Just something that Paul said and Gina said, fundraising, grant writing, Razor's Edge has to do with those areas, which is all essential. Those are all areas that nonprofits are constantly looking for. And so there are certifications there's education in that. I would say that is something that people should look at as well. And as far as pay, the pay is actually more comparable to the for-profit sector than you think. To what Paul said, the benefits are amazing. The time off is amazing. The camaraderie is amazing. And if you've ever looked at a public record, a 990 scheduled day and what nonprofits make, there's money to be made. So you can have a good career in a nonprofit.
Okay, thank you. Geri?
I would like to add that if you're responding to an ad, read it really carefully before you respond and target what they're looking for, because we receive a lot of ads. It's like, well, maybe through Indeed where it's a standard resume, it's not custom. If it's asking for a cover letter, do a cover letter, and don't be afraid to say, some of these soft skills that we're talking about, some of these experiences, put that in there, because that's really important, because we're hiring a whole person and not just a skill set. So it's really important that you do that.
Thank you. Gina?
Right now, and I think what really kicked it off was April of this year, is that we're finding ourselves in this great resignation era of the workforce, where millions of Americans are making a switch of some kind. They're not going back to their old jobs. They're finding new things. They're pivoting into different areas. So at the moment, and who knows for how long this will be sustainable, but I really do think the ball will be more so in the candidate court for a while. And this is true because we know what we can do now with the capabilities and resources that we've learned through from last year. But also too, organizations are being a lot more creative and flexible with what they're needing to see for their own teams and the long-term effects of what the organization can do. So even though there are people who are making big strides to move around and find the next best thing, it's going to be this way for a while, which I think is good. It's nice to explore other things. So for those who are wondering what that means for their search, please have fun with it. It should be an enjoyable time. And, you know, Paul mentioned you should not feel the burnout, but there's lots to explore right now that did not exist even 2 years ago. So it is a very unique time to be looking for new opportunities in our sector.
Okay, great. And Paul, final comments?
Yeah, I mean, just want to echo what everybody says. You know, it's a great time to be in nonprofits. You know, think outside of the box. A lot of people looking to career change. There are opportunities out there. And I want to really preface, if you see a career fair or an opportunity, a hiring event with where a bunch of companies are going to be there, that's a really great time for you to go out and sell yourself. And especially if you're looking to change careers and go. We just held a career fair back in June, and we had a couple nonprofits there that hired people just because they had a chance to meet them in person. They could talk about their experiences. It's a lot better to do that than send a resume, because you're putting a face to the name. So I really encourage people to do that. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of career fairs and things, you know, coming down the pipeline. It's a great opportunity. But I really appreciate you all having me today. This has been a great experience.
Well, I appreciate all of you taking time out from your schedules to participate today, to provide us with some information, and for the job seekers in the audience out here. So what I'm going to do is share my screen to wrap this up. Okay. Again, these were the presenters today: Kate Wollensak with the YMCA, Geri Kerger with Nami, Executive Director of Nami, Paul Lewis with People's Resource Center, and Gina Ciametti with Careers and Nonprofits. The code for today, for those of you working with workNet DuPage, to maintain contact with your counselor, it's NP 81321. That's today's date. NP 81321. And I would just ask you to let us know when you get a job. Our organization does have certain metrics that we report back to Congress. I've been here 26 years. In my 26 years, we've always made the basic, which is 70% of people get jobs. But if 80% of people get jobs, we get incentive monies to serve more of the public. And in my 26 years here, we have always made that. But it's based on you letting us know, giving us feedback that, yes, you've gotten a job. So this program was provided for you today by people from the past who have gotten jobs, so that we could report back to Congress and keep this program funded. Okay. And you know what, once you get a job, it's not over with. We'll follow up with you for the next year to make sure everything's okay, because we've had people returning to us after a couple months on the job or a contract is over with. Coming up next career conversation, August 27th, is using community resources to find job opportunities. You can sign up on our webinar page, worknetdupage.org at webinars. And Jennifer Wegeman will be leading that. I believe we have representatives from Addison Public Library and College DuPage Library and Career Services. And again, the code for those of you working with a counselor here is NP 81321. That's going to conclude today's presentation. I wish to thank all the panelists who participated today. And I hope all of you in the audience have gained a little bit of information in the time that we've had. So anyway, thank you very much and have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.